Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about Foundation Season 2 and the Emperor's No Clothes. That is both literally, there's a naked Lee Pace if that's what you're here for, and there's also uh, a Empire that is naked. Technically, he is also literally, his name is Empire in the show, so I guess you have a naked Lee Pace playing Empire, and then you also have the Empire as a organization and as an entity itself. But it's kind of weird because the character's name is literally named Empire. But anyways, the formal name I think or is it's it's a little tricky to understand. But there's actually the main character is Cleon, who is a clone of Cleon the First, or I think we're at clone number 17, and then he's often referred to as Empire by other people that are not, himself. And anyways, but that's the details about the show. We'll get into all of that at some point, I'm sure. I hope the stream is coming through. Also, just before we go any further, shout out to the SAG-AFTRA writers and the actors who are joining the writers in Hollywood, in the film industry, and TV industry and streaming industries, in striking and solidarity with them. I myself am a creator, writer, artist, and mostly I work in games, but I have done some non-game. I never worked in like Hollywood. Obviously, I'm not in the Screen Actors Guild or the Writers Guild, but we are in support of that because this is very important and momentous action, and I'm gonna tie that into this foundation. The Empire has no clothes. That includes the current day Earth Empire, and part of its exposure, and it's because the Emperor having no clothes is part of it. Is part of the folly of the Empire, which is what's being exposed right now, is being revealed with these mass rolling and growing, gaining steam strikes across the United States, including UPS, which is apparently going to happen in August. So that's. We won't have any more Hollywood movies. We won't have any more Netflix or any other shows. So enjoy your Foundation while it lasts, because that's going to be the last thing that ever comes out. The Barbieheimer and Naked Lee Pace, and then nothing, because all you're going to be watching is Ron Perlman and Danny Trejo teaming up. Since I'm already talking about that, I'll show this other thing that just happened today. All you're going to be watching is, for the next foreseeable future, is Danny Trejo and Ron Perlman starring in Time to Find Out, You Titanic Mother Effers. And I both mean huge pieces of garbage like Bob Iger for making $27 million this year, while actors and writers are literally on food stamps or living out of their cars, right? And also in the sense that Bob Iger and his fellow entertainment executives, Disney, Sony, etc., streaming service executives, maybe you all want to visit the Titanic in an Ocean's Gate submarine. You know, just see if you can survive the 6,000 psi down there, because I heard there is like a imperial sized bag of money somewhere around the Titanic. Maybe you want to go find it, because I know that you're into that. So anyway, just wanted to shout that out before we but that is where the Empire is at in the United States. I'm not saying that we should see Bob Iger and or Joseph Bidenis or Bill Gates or any of these other people naked. I don't think today's Cleons need to get naked on screen. Nobody actually wants to see that. Nobody will see that, because all of Hollywood is shut down, so nobody's gonna be able to film anything. Anyways, so But the Emperor's No Clothes. Let's come back to Foundation before we don't make a video about the show I was making a thumbnail of, which often happens on the Silver Spook videos. Anyways, the Foundation TV series comes out July 14th, which was yesterday. So, but you know, I time travel a lot, so I might have been in July 13th. That's why I said it's coming out July 14th. We already watched it, so that doesn't make any sense. Anyways, Foundation TV series. We watched the first Foundation season about 6 months ago. I did at least one Silver Spook high velocity jet decibel volume educational / edutainment rant. I'm sorry, I don't rant. I only do I only do long stints of education. But the Foundation season 1, liked it a lot. It was you know, you can go back and find that video somewhere in my history of videos. It is one that I kind of center Asimov versus Star Wars and versus Dune, which had come out around the same time or very close to it, or we watched it close together. Asimov's Foundation, Empire versus Multipolarity. So that's another way to dovetail off from the show. But yeah, if you want to see that, Empire versus Multipolarity, and Peace and Prosperity. And I kind of said it more that, you know, how the series itself is like, I think it's actually one of the best of the big space operas. You know, you have your Dunes, you have your Star Wars. Obviously, Star Wars is just a huge universe. And I think I touched on how Dune is also coming out. Dune Part 2, is it? I don't know what it is. It is Dune Part 2. So that's coming out in November 3rd. And, you know, the Dune book was Frank Herbert. But Frank Herbert, I feel like Frank Herbert was, you know, it really was trying to do a more Asimov. Asimov's Foundation came out well before that. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, when did Foundation come out? The book. 1951. Okay. When did Dune come out in the book? Not the show. Yeah, 65. So it was at least 14 years later. And so both of these were post World War II. Both Dune and Foundation were post World War II. Star Wars obviously is, you know, has a lot of characteristics of both. But Foundation, I think, you know, like I said, it was better in a lot of ways. One of the reasons why, I think, is because of who Asimov was as a person with a different perspective than Frank Herbert. Frank Herbert is basically an American through and through. For the most part, he's from the West Coast. I think it was Washington, and his experiences and his life and his perspectives are much more visible in that book. And whereas Asimov was originally from, let me just make sure I get this right. He was originally Russian, right? Asimov was an American writer. He was American, but everybody is American to America. It's just the thing. If anything good comes from you, America gave it to you. But I hate this universalization of American. But Asimov was considered one of the big three science fiction writers. His early life, though, he was born in Russia, right? In the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, previously known as the Russian Soviet Republic, between 1919 and 1920. So he was born like during the revolutionary period in Russia. His parents were Anna Rachel and Judah Asimov, family of Russian Jewish millers. So actually, Taika Waititi has more in common with Isaac Asimov than Taika Waititi has in common with Bob Iger, who Taika has had to work for. I would argue that Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, who said writers and actors are being unrealistic while they're like literally making like $5 or $0 from months of or years of their labor to make TV shows, when Bob Iger, right, is in his private jet at a billionaire's retreat, right? So Bob Iger, as a particular, deeply American, Anglo-Saxoid, Western Euroid person on his private jet retreat, has more in common with Frank Herbert, who is also one of those people. whereas Taika Waititi, who is not doing, I think Taika has kind of said, I'm overdoing these Hollywood movies anymore. I think I'm gonna go back to doing Reservation Dogs, which is about indigenous actual life, and it's kind of anti-Hollywood. It's actually anti-California in a lot of ways. And I'm gonna do weird, movies about Aotearoa New Zealand, Samoan soccer teams being coached by, I'm gonna do weird indie films with Michael Fassbender coaching the Samoan soccer team. Taika Waititi's mother was a Russian Jew. She was a communist. And his father was an indigenous Pacific person, a Maori person. So Taika Waititi is actually closer to Isaac Asimov. You would think that, Taika Waititi and, Michael Bay, they're all Hollywood directors, right? Taika Waititi, but no, it's actually like there's a serious split there that's not, the United States wants to play that down, right? They just call Asimov American, but the reality is Asimov is not very American. He was not very American. Being communist is not being American. Being from Russia is not American. Being from Russia is being the enemy, especially now, right? Ask NATO stand employees like Tony Blinken. Ask the Western powers what they think about Russia being Russian. It's being Eastern has never been an American thing, and that's the thing that they try to play this down by making anyone who is successful and who invents technologies, who does great things, they take that and go, well, you did a great thing, that means you were American, or you were Western. Before American, then you were a Western European, and everything that was bad, like being authoritarian, being communist, and those are the same thing, obviously. That's all coming from somewhere else, right? So but that reality is like Asimov has a very different perspective, right? Even though he did live in the United States, and he saw positive things about the United States, right? He didn't recite the myriad prayers prescribed by every action, and he's an Orthodox Jew. His family traveled to the United States on the RMS Baltic, arriving in February 3rd, 1923, when he was 3 years old. His parents spoke Yiddish and English to him. He didn't learn Russian, unfortunately. His parents used it as a secret language when they wanted to discuss privately something my big ears did not want to hear. But he was still raised by these the people and that were deeply Russian. Again, Taika Waititi did not live in Russia either, right? And obviously he's Jewish and Russian, but he made a movie where the communists defeat the Nazis. It's called Jojo Rabbit. I mean, I know that I'm kind of off the topic, but I promise I'm going to come back to why the point I'm trying to make is why Foundation is better than all the Western Euro colonial and United States as a Euro settler colony space opera shows. And I think it has a lot to do with the perspective of the people that were originally writing it. And so when Taika did he did Jojo Rabbit, which is what when Bob Iger, or when a Westoid person, when a Westoid deeply embroiled in imperial culture in the sense of capitalist, colonialist culture makes a movie, they make Captain America, which Captain America, now Captain America does, punch, he does fight some Nazis, but Captain America has always been about getting people to sign up for the U.S. military on the idea that the West and the capitalist world has ever won World War II, which is a lie. It wasn't. It was always the communist countries, right? Now we're finding out, as the CEOs of all the major corporations are showing as the capitalist world and is showing its ass,
As the capitalist world is showing its ass, as UPS workers are going to go on strike, grind the U.S. economy to a halt because they can't give basic things like air conditioning, so the UPS truck drivers don't die in the truck in the year when world record 132-degree temperatures are being hit in the history of the Earth, basically, in the history of the known recorded history of the planet. We're hitting the hottest temperatures, and people are dying in the trucks. And the United States, which is the head of the West, is in the beginning of it. And it's going to go through the disrobing of itself, which is amazing. I mean, love seeing Lee Camp naked. I'm sorry, that's love seeing Lee face naked. Lee Camp is a anti-imperialist comedian / journalist that was banned in the Western media because he said true things. Don't want to see him naked. I don't want. Lee Pace is not fully naked. Okay, there is no wildly flapping imperial dong. Okay, so as far as not in episode 1 anyway, we can't see into the future of this season, but I'm just saying that the United States is revealing who it is, who as an empire, right? That's why it has an empire state building. This is a weird thing, right? Because it's kind of like sometimes it wants to be an empire, but sometimes it has this deeply schizoid relationship with its imperial nature, right? Which is it wants to be freedom and democracy, but simultaneously the U.S. is also an empire. But not when it's bad. Well, it's kind of like that thing, right? Anything that's bad about empire, that is something that someone else is doing. That's not what we're doing. But anything that's good, which is like, we're just operating a rules-based international order. It's not an empire, right? Anything that good comes out of it, that's us. But the United States is an empire. It absolutely is. I say that as a native Hawaiian under illegal U.S. military occupation. And so when watching Foundation from that perspective, it's like, oh, like obviously, it's like coming back to the Captain America thing, right? Captain America, I guess one thing is at least it is ostensibly anti-Nazi, right? Although the United States is kind of not sure where it wants to stand on that. Now, when it comes to Ukraine, they will fund and arm to the tune of $50+ billion Nazis, right? Especially Stepan Bandera worshippers, the three stripes in Vietnam, fascists around the world. They were inside the United States. They don't know, but again, that's the multiple personality disorder. It's just called being disingenuous, and it's just called being unable to keep track of who you're propagandizing at any one point, right? So if you're talking to Americans, you pretend like you don't like Nazis, but if you're talking to Ukrainians, you're like, okay, well, everybody sign up for the Nazi military so we can cause proxy wars with Taika Waititi's mother's homeland and Isaac Asimov's homeland, right? That's the problem with making anything in the West is nothing ever makes sense. Anyways, I don't want to get too deep in that woods, but I do want to say that the Jojo Rabbit is a movie that Taika made specifically about the communist defeating. Well, it's not about that, but that is what happens in the movie. That's actually in the background, and it actually goes through what it actually is like to be under a Nazi regime inside of Germany during World War II, and it trying to survive that. It's not about. As I pointed out, it's not about just the war and the fighting. Like Saving Private Ryan is about how awesome, and look at all this cool gunshots and tank explosions, and that's awesome. And I could be a glorious fighter with American soldiers in World War II. Never mind the fact that Russia lost 20 times more and fought 20 times harder, and the United States funded the Nazis through people like Mr. Ford, who made billions of dollars supplying bullets, rifles, aircraft, and tanks. Henry Ford, obviously, along with IBM, who helped track and commit genocide against Jewish people by supplying them with the data infrastructure to do it. And the United States rulers have always wished that Germany and wished that fascism had won and not quite turned on them as hard as they did.
but that's not what happened, right? And so the Captain America movies, the Saving Private Ryan movies, the Westoid, Angloid, right? Frank Herbert, Bob Iger narrative is different from the let's just call it what is the non-white narrative a lot of the time, although not exclusively, but the narratives coming from people who were on the other side, who were like, well, we fought this war actually, and you capitalists in America funded and armed the Nazis as you do now. That's why America's falling apart now, because it's still funding and arming Nazis in Nazi-filled Ukraine. And so, right, so if you think of it in that way, right, in the East-West split, well, on the Eastern communist side, they were like, how can America take credit for these wars, right? How can you take credit? How can you, Captain America? How can you Saving Private Ryan, right? How can you American World War II movies makers about how you saved the world by getting everyone to join the U.S. military, which is what they've been doing for the last 80 years, right? How can you be making these movies, right, lying about history? You were the one on the other side for most of the time. You are the one who is oppressing. You are the one. Hitler based his ideas on the United States oppression of black and indigenous peoples. IBM software, the computer technology to track and put barcodes on Jewish people and gay people, which the Nazis, trans and gay people were targeted and annihilated by the Nazis as well, which is where the U.S. is going right now, right? Funding and arming its own conservative far rights inside the United States and literal Nazis in the United States, right? The United States was the model for Nazi Germany, and now you want to make movies about how you saved the world from Nazi Germany and fascism. And so from an indigenous, from a Jewish, from a Russian communist perspective, it's very different, you know. And so Asimov's perspective is, you know, I mean, I can't tell you, I don't know him personally. I'm not his biographer. I haven't researched everything, but you know, in the books, it comes from a very different place. It comes from a dialectical materialist. It's a very Marxist, historical analysis based, like wide macro scale analysis of history based story. It's you know, the Foundation series, right? So I think somebody recently commented Star Wars relies heavily, or no, there's bits of Foundation, the TV series series season 1, that relies on the chosen one, yada yada. You know, I have super military skills, and fly X-Wings good, and I have, you know, samurai like laser sword skills, and that is what saves the universe. And it relies a little bit too much on this kind of like it's very Westoid. It's individualized hyper military prowess and nonsensical strong individual great man or great moisture farmer boy of history theory, you know. And so, but that's not the actual Foundation series is more about the changes, you know, in a dialectical materialist way, in a Das Kapital, you know, dialectical in a Marxian sense way. It's about thinking about how entire systems and entire societies, civilizations, right, interact with nature, how the atoms and the electrons interact with each other, and then the physical world interacts with the people interact with each other, and then over time this causes you know, changes, growth, declines, right, balkanizations, reintegrations, right, and so it's like mass collective societal analysis, right, is like that's a thing that the Russians did, but that's not a capitalist thing. They don't teach you how to think in that way in the West, right? They teach you how to think in individual, short term, right, like this fiscal quarter. If you're the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, obviously, or just any Westerner, right? Think about yourself, how much money you can make, what you can do to maximize your personal
rational self-interest. Like how many private jet, like when you fly to the Screen Actors Guild strike and spit on their faces, right? When you go to Ron Perlman, right? When you go to Danny Trejo and Ron Perlman, who are striking in the street, and like spit on them from your private jet, how many more private jets can you buy, right? If you cause all of the writers and actors to lose their houses, which is what the Hollywood executives said, right? How many more yachts and private jets and hedge fund meetings in Vegas, and how many more times can you visit the Louvre and go have Taylor Swift personally play a rock concert for you? How many can you get with another 3 months starving the artists out? If you can AI-ify all of the writers and actors out of existence, how many more personal private jets can you buy? That's the only thing that the West thinks about. That's what they want everyone to think about. The Western capitalist world, right? The East is all about collective. The East, I mean, it's really, right? Striking is a deeply Eastern, deeply communistic, deeply indigenous thing to do, because it's about thinking about the masses. We, all of us together as the SAG-AFTRA organization, right? All of us together are moving this civilization in a direction for the better of us, not just for us right now, right? Now, some people still, the Western capitalist, selfish, short-term, small-minded, small geography thinking, right? Non-dialectical thinking is, well, that's some of the AFL-CIO of the early like 1920s, which is like, I'm just gonna get enough from me and then quit, right? But a lot of the people who are in the unions, they're like, this is not just about us, right? The UPS workers who are gonna go on strike very soon, that's gonna grind America's economy to a halt. That's amazing. Good job. The UPS, because you deserve more than making nothing and losing your house, right? So the people, so the UPS workers were honking in solidarity with the writers and the actors, right? That is not Western thinking, right? That is not, how is the writers getting paid more and actors getting paid more going to help the UPS worker get paid more, right? That is where Angloid analysis ends. That's where Franco analysis ends. That's where Spanish and Greco-Roman analysis ends. How can I get more from me? That's about as far as they think. That's as far as Bob Iger thinks. That's as far as Elon thinks. How can I get more from me right now? Maybe 5 years to 10 years from now, I don't really care. All I want to do as Elon Musk is get naked and fuck lots of clones of Grimes and anime titty waifus and impregnate them so I can make more of the white male species, or make more, save our birthright of white people. That's as far as the Elon analysis goes. How can I personally help myself? So they can't even understand why UPS workers and SAG-AFTRA workers would be like in solidarity, because like you're different industries. How are you helping yourself? But that's because you have a Western analysis. You don't have indigenous thinking. You don't have communist thinking. You don't have mass societal thinking. You think in terms of your individual personal self, right? And so that's where that's where the real struggle is. That's where it's always been. And so that's where the emperor lacking clothes is really revealing itself right now. This has nothing to do with the Foundation show, I know, in this moment, but I got to get out of here. I can't be here too long because I got to go and stream again in the evening. So glad the actors finally joined the strike. Yeah, and so they are formally announced that they're striking and they're moving. And so in that sense, obviously, I say it's America. Obviously, not every single person inside the United States is thinking in that way, but like as a capitalist, colonialist, like in the cultural average and the dominant place that the place has been, right? The United States is the capitalist center of the world for the last 80 years, right? It has pushed every war against any attempt, right, Now, of course, it's mostly coming from the ruling class edge of the United States, but and part of it is because the United States is not really a democracy. It's run by its a capitalist entity can't ever be a democracy for reasons that I explain a lot, but I probably should stop. And so the United States is, has a lot of people inside of it who would like things to be different, right? And that's why these huge strikes are happening. But it continue. But who controls the United States government, the United States business, the United States output of economic activity, the United States military? That's still, arguably a minority of people. In the sense of, well, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't understand the deep historical and dialectical analysis, or just like analyzing history outside and analyzing reality outside of your own personal lifetime and even your own narrow personal present, right? And thinking in these larger scales, thinking about what climate scientists sometimes call hyper objects, which are too vast in space. Like climate change is something that impacts an entire planet. It works over time scales of decades and centuries, not day to day. It's not fiscal quarter. Like if the planet's temperature goes up 2 to 5 degrees, that doesn't happen over the course of a fiscal quarter. So that's not even perceptible from a Western capitalist analysis, right? But it is hyper objects, like huge scale things, again, right, are not imperceptible for indigenous thinking and indigenous. Sometimes it's called spiralic temporality, which is like related to the spiralic thinking of Pacific peoples, in the sense of, for Maori people, the koru symbolizes that, which is thinking in terms of yourself 7 generations prior in the repeating koru fern spiral that is a symbol of their of a very important plant in Aotearoa that they use. Speaking of Taika Waititi, that also symbolizes how you are connected to your parents, to your great grandparents, your great grandparents, and perpetuating culture forward for generations to make sure that the world continues and your culture and your society perpetuates into the future. But that kind of thinking, that acting, right, to produce eco forests and entire multi-thousand year old growth forests and entire carefully maintained basically food forests, and with that have amazing levels of productivity and actually have human intervention but appear to be natural to Europeans because they don't understand that takes amazing levels. You think about dialectical material thinking, where you're thinking about the movement of societies over decades and centuries, which is what Foundation is about, and multi-thousand year thinking of indigenous, Anishinaabe and Blackfoot and North Turtle Island or North American people's ability to, carefully harvest only exactly what you need of the wild rices, right? To never touch, to burn specifically, right? Controlled burn in California, as an example, right? Specific underbrush to maintain the amazing, right, sequoias that the United States is cutting down now, right? That Canada's cutting down now, that have maintained this super productive, Edenic, in the sense of the Western Bible, but the part of the West's problem is that they come out of a place where they have just never known how to maintain themselves and stop mass violence and disinformation. But the Turtle Island did have a mass production with minimal work required, that supplied the food, medicine, and all the needs of the people with very little total effort. But that requires long-term thinking, collective thinking, not individualistic thinking. They have, as Native Hawaiians and indigenous Turtle Island people, we have specific stories and myths and educational and scientific, social scientific learning and education that we pass down through our Tales of the Flying Kalas one in Hawaii, right? Which is about the single person who had the infinite hunger, the single capitalist in a sea of Hawaiians who were fundamentally collective, deep, long-term thinkers, collective thinkers. The one person who thought of himself is removed from Hawaiian society by the ancestor, the Kalo, in our myth, right? Who wants to only eat and take for himself, because that was not our life way. That was not our overarching culture. Turtle Island, they have the story of the Wendigo. Multiple indigenous cultures have the story of the one person who desired selfish, personal consumption of all the food and became a cannibal and would eat his neighbors. He would consume everything, right? Thinking only of himself. And the Wendigo would come during the times of scarcity. Sometimes it's a giant 10-foot animal with massive, bear-like teeth and sharp claws and constantly eating everything around it, right? Even eating other members of its species. But it's a metaphor for a way of existing that most all of the people of those indigenous cultures didn't partake of, right? Which is selfish, imperial, capitalistic, thinking about myself, willing to do needless violence to others for myself, right? And to push that out of the society, so that, because if that perpetuated through the society, they would not be able to perpetuate themselves in their culture and maintain the environment, right? The way that Turtle Island and indigenous peoples have, which the Europeans did not and have not, right? And their capitalist system absolutely at the highest scale has not. It's about to kill the planet, right? And then they wring their hands and cry about it all day long, right? Rather than listen to the rest of the 90% of the world that's well, we have lots of things that we have done that have kind of counteracted the system, and you people don't seem to want to listen. You just want to wring your hands and write stupid liberal articles in the BBC and the Guardian about what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, what we can do is destroy your capitalist system and build something else that is not inhuman and not imperial. But anyways, that's a lot of discussion that's not foundation, so I should probably move on. And also, what's up, Big Teal and Emma? Okay, anyways, that's not foundation, so let's move back into the foundation. So, Emperor's no clothes. Since I've been talking a lot about heady, intellectualized, I'm all up inside of the intellectualisms. Look at a picture of Lee Camp with no clothes on. I'm sorry, Lee Pace. I keep seeing Lee Camp. Lee Camp is he's like, hey, I'm just a comedian here. I'm just a long-haired comedian from DC. I'm in the belly of the beast. I don't want to unleash the beast. I'm not making porn. I'm not saying there's porn in Foundation. I'm just saying. Foundation. Foundation Season 2 has a very Game of Thrones Season 1 feeling to it, I hope that the intimacy coordinator I hope that the intimacy coordinator was hired for the Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, for directing Lee Pace's pecs. Guys, no, there's Lee Pace Foundation 2. There is actually a nude. Who is the lady? There is an. Let me slow down a little bit. I think she's Scandinavian some type. Laura Byrne, that's her name. There's Lee Pace and Laura Byrne. The show opens with a sex scene between the Emperor of the Galaxy and his cybernetic, multi-century old robot mother. So very, 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 very Greek in that sense. Very, very Oedipus. Something very Oedipus about that. He's fucking his mom, basically. Or technically, it's not his mom. It's his robot. It's his robot. What is it exactly? It's weird. It's weird. But this is a normal thing. This is a normal thing for imperialist, nobility of Europe to do, is to just, do incest. And so, anyways, so Lee Pace, it opens with a sex scene, and so why is that Game of Thrones like? You may ask. Well, you see, Game of Thrones is actually, it has some similarities. I mean, I actually did like Game of Thrones. Some people don't like Game of Thrones. I know, it's fine. You don't have to like it. It's super Euroid. It's Euroid. It's Euroid as fuck. You know what I'm saying? And Foundation has black characters in it too. It's not just that. But Game of Thrones opened with Jason Momoa and what's her name?
Daenerys Targaryen, played by um, the girl plays Daenerys Targaryen. I can't remember people's names, but anyways, it should be really obvious. She's also in the new show that just came out. She's in that new what the hell is it? I just did a video about it. Secret Invasion. God damn it. So anyways, so Lee Pace and Laura Burns opening sex scenes with like some nobility, some, you know, powerful leader having sex with someone, and then being naked a lot is very similar to the opening of the Game of Thrones with Khal Drogo and Daenerys, where, you know, basically a lot of the show in the beginning, they were like, I don't know if we're gonna even have a second show. You know, you're like, holy shit, I'm a Hollywood writer and actor. I am making enough to buy half a can of black beans, and maybe I'll have black beans and a spoonful of peanut butter. I heard you know, I heard all these stories about eating like a stick of butter over the course of, you know, or like 4 sticks of butter over the course of a week to make it last. You know, getting having ramen and the cheapest possible knockoff, great value Walmart pasta every day of the week as a Hollywood worker, as a writer and actor, right? And you know, I feel that because that's what I had to do when I was working as a teacher. Like, I was a teacher in the United States, and I got paid so much I was like literally eating spoonfuls of peanut butter for dinner. Skippy's peanut butter crunchy, gives you a little bit more texture. A little bit more texture. You get some real peanuts in there, right? It's not just hydrogenated soybean oil, right? Yellow number 5, red number 8, brown number 3, also known as feces. Also known as feces. I'm just kidding. You're not eating shit in the. I hope not. Yeah. So Skippy's peanut butter is what I ate on a regular basis, or just a handful of mixed cashews and pecans, because that's all we could afford when I was working as a teacher. And so when you're doing that and you're filming something like this at the same time, you're like, holy shit, it's so great to be a actor and a writer. Jason Momoa and Daenerys Targaryen, you know, it's so great to be acting, but I don't know if we'll have a job next year, even though the pay is shit. Maybe the pay wasn't quite as shit at the time. I keep saying that Avatar's, you know, Dante Basco is over there. I made 25 cents voice acting in some huge anime series. I made like, you know, you got you know, John Cusack's like, I held up a boombox. John Cusack, right? John Cusack is all over there, right? John Cusack is all like, I held up a boombox. And it's an AI. The AI is a criminal enterprise. The greed is legendary. When I was young, I did a film with a boombox. Somehow I got the points, and never expect to see any money. But the film became quite famous. 10 years ago, I looked at the financial statements. They were obligated to report. And to my shock, they had lost $44 million on the film. So John Cusack, I made this massive, super famous freaking movie, right? Where I hold up my giant boombox and I yell, girlfriend, come back to me. Don't do that, okay? Just pro tip for horny 20, 15 to 35-year-old dudes, okay? Don't make it weird and hold up a boombox at your girlfriend. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying that this is a popular movie. That's all I'm saying. Bad, weird, stalkery, toxic way to hit on the women. Don't call them femoids. That's weird and gross. Okay, just pro tip. Just trying to help you helping you possibly have romantic and or sexual encounters sometime in your incel life. Anyways, so John Cusack is made like I remember this. I haven't even seen this movie, but I know this, right? I remember when it came out. It was huge. He got nothing. He got nothing for that. And I'm sure he's not poor, but you know, but there's a lot of people that, you know, you think they're doing a lot better. You would think they're doing so well, but they're actually doing really terribly. Like Anna Kendrick is one of them. Like, she's been in Pitch Perfect. She's been in so many shows. She was like, had to like, pay for everything on credit cards. He was like, a lot of them are on food stamps or on like, they're basically like can't afford to show up for their own premieres. I mean, you're seeing these stories all over the place, which is good. That's what we need to have, And so
And so I'm going to tie this back in, I promise. But with Game of Thrones,
it actually kind of does interestingly tie in with Game of Thrones. With Khal Drogo and Daenerys, they were not sure if they were going to make another show, right? And so what they did was, well, we're going to have lots of sex scenes. Also, one thing was really messed up, which is that there wasn't an intimacy coordinator, apparently. Holly was telling me, for the many sex scenes, and apparently Daenerys Targaryen's actress, who is played by Emilia Clarke. Why am I so missing my actresses' names now? She's in freaking one of my favorite franchises of all time, Terminator. Why don't I remember that? Anyway, Emilia Clarke and Khal Drogo, have much. Well, Emilia Clarke's character, Daenerys Targaryen and Khal Drogo. I almost said Khal Carbon, and I was like, weird crossover. He does kind of resemble him. Anyways, Khal Carbon is a guy from my game Neofeud. Anyways, so Emilia Clarke and Carlos Drogos. I'm just kidding. Emilia Clarke and Jason Momoa had to coordinate multiple sex scenes, right, many times themselves, because there was no. Just if you don't know, like, there's supposed to be an intimacy coordinator, who is somebody who specializes specifically in working out how the actors in a scene are going to engage, like who touches who, where, and how, and like, is everybody comfortable with these things, right? Because it's, it can get really weird, and like, not good things can happen when you have sex scenes, and there was no intimacy coordinator to help with the show. Why? Well, let's chalk it up to, the capitalist, selfish, spoiled prick dudes. The Benioff was literally they're also descendant. They're literal They're literal Cleons, right? The people, the two showrunners of the Game of Thrones, they were basically spoiled rich pricks, like the child of a former emperor, ultra rich child, spoiled king, Cleon the 17th or the 18th or the 22nd, who cares, right? And so similarly, the people who were coordinating the sex scenes didn't really they didn't do it at all. And basically, Emilia Clarke ended up, like, at the end of scenes, like, crying. She was left, like, naked, and it was really a really bad experience, a really not good experience. And that's a kind of a side note, but it is part of this entire, the reason, the mistreatment of the cast and the crew on the set of Game of Thrones, like the mistreatment of all of the Hollywood workers, writers, actors. We haven't even got to the grips and the secondary people, the aides and the assistants and the production manager. The makeup people are all going to be jobless too. But the thing is, they're also treated terribly too, right? The ones that are most visible are the actors, and the writers are less visible. But you think about them more because the show doesn't even exist. You hear a little bit more about writers, but there's so many other people who work in Hollywood who also get horribly mistreated. So the mistreatment of the actors and the writers is also part of the Emperor. So, like, Jason Momoa as the Emperor, he's not really the Emperor. He's the Khal of the barbarian in a European sense. The types. I guess they're somewhat Mongolian coded in some ways, in a Eurasian history sense, right? So the Khals of Game of Thrones, have no clothes. The head, well, they have no clothes. They're barbarians, right? Like Conan, right? A lot of science fiction and fantasy post Conan the Barbarian, including Fire and Ice, a interesting dumpster fire plot, but Ralph Bakshi did the animation, so you get a lot of Jessica Rabbit looking, a lot of butts, the most butts per second of screen time I've ever seen in a movie. Animated butts, amazing. Fire and Ice movie, check it out, or don't if you're not into butts. But if you're into Lee Pace's butt, then you can check out Foundation. Anyways, if you're into Game of Thrones' butt, check out this one. You see, this is I'm very on theme. I'm bringing it all back to nudity. It's all about the clothingless gluteus maximus and minimus. If you're Emilia Clarke, she's very small. It's a size difference. It's a very, very, very large guy, very small girl. But anyways, the point is that, like, the Jason Momoa's had to be his own he had to be their own intimacy coordinator. Like he was the one that was like, hey, this is like this sex scene is not going. I don't know if this is appropriate. And like the showrunner guys were like, do more. You know, and had people doing all kind of things that they really didn't want to do. But it's like, well, we have the power to do it because, well, we are Empire, right? And so you know, I have the power, because the thing about in the Foundation series, the thing about the Cleons, right, is that they're basically the Roman Empire. If you want to have me go a little deeper into the whole world and history of the Foundation, watch the other Foundation video, because I don't have time for that. But the Cleons are basically the equivalent of a Roman Empire or a British or an American Empire. You know, it's all the fucking same basically. But a lot of things are more coded Roman. They say things like enjoy and respect the peace, and he has the ultimate power to do whatever he wants. He can order anyone to do anything, right? He's constantly threatening people. Like if somebody is like saying, "Oh, Empire, you know, Your Majesty, Your Majesty, you must really have this anesthetic, so that the nanites that are repairing your body." There's one scene where he gets like cut up by assassins after his naked fight scene. He goes from sex scene straight to fight scene. So this is hardcore, man. This is hardcore. I hope that an intimacy and martial arts coordinator, right? So he could fly with his dong flying on the screen, because this is like when he does that, like backward hammered fist with his dick on the ninja's head. That was. I'm just kidding. That didn't happen. That would possibly be, that's on the OnlyFans. I don't know if he has one. And so, but when he does go from a sex scene straight to a fight scene. And then after that, he's like naked in a bathtub. He's like, the first 15 minutes is just nakedly paced. Basically, that's what the show is for the first 15 minutes. And so, and then the person who is the doctor who is inserting the nanites or whatever science fictional magical healing process into the milk colored android's blood or whatever they use in the tub. It's white liquid, hopefully not semen. Anyways, and then he doesn't want anesthetic. He doesn't want to be put to sleep because he doesn't trust anyone. He has been attacked. It was an assassination attempt. So legitimately, he is right to be paranoid and suspicious. Not really paranoid, just like suspicious and rightfully worried about who might want to have killed him and who might be working against him, right? As the Emperor, right? But he is constantly threatening, like, if you say that again, if you tell me to take anesthetic again, you're dead, right? Because I'm the Emperor, right? And so that's constantly he is interrogating someone and he holds up his hand like this and he like moves his. I really love that because it kind of it shows, like, it reveals like that cinematically, right? When it's a direct send up of the Roman thumb, like when I don't know, when Joaquin Phoenix is in a movie and Russell Crowe is gladiating and fighting in his Roman skirt, and Joaquin Phoenix, who's also going to be another emperor, Napoleon, puts his thumb up like this, right? And he puts it out like that, and he either goes up or goes down, right? If it goes down, you're dead, right? If it goes up, you live, right? And so in Foundation, that's what's very Roman coded. He puts his hand like this, right? It's almost it's a very like it's a simultaneously Christian, right? It's a very Westoid Euro Christian symbol, but it's also a death symbol. He puts his hand up like this, and if he turns his hand, then you're dead. It's like when he puts his hand up, it's like, are you ready to? If you do, I am about to have you exterminated by my soldiers, by my centurions, or sometimes it could be an entire planet. There's a point where he puts his hand up like this, and you're watching on screen an entire planet. Like it's very much like the Death Star scene, right, where the Emperor orders the entire planet of Alderaan destroyed, right? And that's a Star Wars, you know that scene, right? Alderaan, Death Star destruction, where the Death Star aims its giant battle station the size of a moon, hyper powered. I forget what technology it is. Doesn't really matter. Laser beam that blows up the entire moon, right?
But like in Foundation, that's actually a good. That's a good comparison between Star Wars and George Lucas, and Foundation, which is a different show. But like in when it happens in Foundation, and actually that was the point I was making in the first video. Foundation's empire is much more honestly told. Like now, obviously, I was making these comments about Asimov being Russian and coming from and his family coming because of course he didn't spend his entire life in Russia, but his family were certainly raised in Russia. They had Russian thing, and they passed a lot to him. In the way that Taika Waititi, who was a communist Jewish woman, very important to remember. Taika Waititi's mother, Taika Waititi, director of Thor Ragnarok, Taika Waititi, beloved Our Flag Means Death, director of the best gay pirate show, Taika Waititi, famed director, multiple Academy Award nominee, like Taika Waititi, director of like the best indigenous Pacifica movie I have ever seen. Boy, Taika Waititi is the child of indigenous person and a Russian communist Jew. And so when Asimov, wrote the book, it had, as I said, a very dialectical analysis. But then there's a way you could take that book and do it badly, And I don't like Apple particularly. I don't even have a lot of Apple products. I'm not a weird Apple nerd with $25,000 to spend on every tablet and phone that they put out, like some kind of weird, some kind of weird cultic worshiper of a Jobsian god with the religious symbol of a white fruit. I don't have that kind of money, But anyways, whatever you think about Apple TV, the people who made this show have like definitely not gone in a certain direction. Like they haven't gone full Bob Iger, they haven't gone full Disney with it. So that makes it it's more honest to the original material. And the original material, it is more dialectical. It's more Marxist, It's not necessarily like the book isn't like we should it doesn't like say like we must make revolution and undo the capitalist system in the United States, and it's not Boots Riley, sorry to bother you, which is more Boots Riley also has he's a black communist person from the United States who also has a movie called a TV show called I'm a Libra, I'm a Virgo, right? I'm a Virgo. It's like I can never get these things straight. I'm a Virgo, right? Is another show which has a lot of the elements in it. So it's not necessarily that, but it is definitely like the kind of thinking that it's doing is much more of and is a much more dialectical analysis, much more not necessarily left. It's much more Eastern. It's you get the sense that it's somebody who was raised by people who were trained in dialectical thinking and Marxian analysis and deep, long historical analysis. That's the way the show is. The show is the books are multi-century, multi-thousand year. It's sometimes, see, the problem with that kind of deep thinking is that, not the problem with it, but the thing that it can be difficult to do is to maintain compelling storylines, right? Because this is a story where basically, let me quickly summarize this, but in this story, this is like a random some sentences about it. In 100, Foundation's custom. So 173 years since the predecessors exiled the psychohistorian Harry Seldon and his foundation. The foundation is basically a revolutionary Marxist organization, is what it really is. But they exiled the foundation to the edge, but they're not saying that because, well, he's writing it in the United States. His foundation to the edge of the empire over his heretical calculation that their civilization was on the verge of collapse, and time is clearly on the side of his argument. So basically, in this world, you have Harry Seldon he is like a Lenin almost. He's like a Lenin, or he's like a Martin Luther King. Well, the United States killed Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. So the United States shot Harry Seldon inside of it. 60. It's another way to think about it, right? Harry Seldon has. It's interesting how they describe it, right? Psychohistory. It's almost like Asimov was like making up words that sound cool to some white man, browsing a science fiction section of a bookstore
in capitalist America, Los Angeles, circa 1955. You know, like psychohistory. Oh, that sounds really cool. What is psychohistory? Is basically it's dialectical. It's dialectical leftist analysis. Is what it is. It's like let's analyze the changing of people's psychology, society, the interaction of the people who make the change the environment. The environment changes the people over time. Masses of people, not individuals, right? And then let's use what we understand about that, right? How the contradictions, right? The different elements of race, of class, of the labor versus the capital, right? And the frustrations of the labor, the anger and resentment that is not being met by the capital, like what's happening with the writer, why the writer strike is happening, right? And how that action, which results in different things, that comes out as strikes, that comes out as unionization, and the capital crushes back down with police and strike breaking and disinformation and campaigns against them, right? And how that interaction and the class struggle, right, produces new society, right, produces new realities, economic realities, right, societal reality. I mean, you can't do that analysis at an individual scale, right? You can't talk about this king and that prince and what they did as you can't talk about great individual men of history. It's always men because it's patriarchal West. And then also do this kind of analysis. Also, you just can't do it because the societies don't have democracy or freedom of speech actually in the West. So I would argue the reason why Asimov has to use words like psycho, what the fuck does that even mean? You have to use the word psychohistorian because you can't just say Marxist dialectical analysis. You can't just say communism, or the United States will banish you from the country. You also, your mommy and daddy were Russian. What are you, a communist spy? It's 1951. Isaac Asimov. So psychohistory is really a stand-in for, that's what it is ultimately, right? And now you could, well, it's science fiction, yeah, but I mean, lots of people encrypt what they actually want to say in unfree places like the United States, in censorship authoritarian regimes like the United States and the capitalist regimes, which are the authoritarian free speechless regimes. You have to encrypt in science fiction and in weird, you can't say what you mean because the United States won't allow you to. They want to think that you can by giving you a lot of freedom to say anything between Joe Biden and literal Nazis like what's his governor of so-called Florida, right? But that's not a freedom of speech. That's a freedom to say anything pro-capitalist, but anything outside that, you're gonna be you're gonna be not working ever again. It's called the Red Scare. It's called McCarthy. It's called It's called being scared that you will be deported because you're Chinese at a university because you're working for the CCP. What kind of you can't even study studying while Chinese, right? Doing mathematics. Asimov was a mathematician. Doing mathematics while Russian or Chinese is enough to put you in a deep dark cell. What the fuck? No, there's no such thing as freedom in the United States. It's a joke. Psychohistorian was encrypted term for actual thinking, right? Because a Russian communist couldn't say what he wanted to say in racist, capitalist, free speechless, idiot-filled America. That's what that means. And so, so Harry Seldon and his foundation, right, are Harry Seldon and his foundation are Ho Chi Minh in the forest. Harry Seldon and his foundation are Che Guevara and the guerrilla communists in South and Central America, at the edges of the American empire under the Monroe Doctrine in South America with its death squads. Harry Seldon is, Lenin organizing with the farmers and the poor peasantry outside of the capitals of the Tsar. Harry Seldon is the indigenous people that are currently had to organize outside of Cochabamba in Bolivia against the U.S.-backed AOS imperial fascist dictatorship with Harvard-trained WTO-employed neoliberal economists in Bolivia. This is just normal history, but it has to be psychohistory because we live in little kiddie land. We live in candy land with candy-ass white people in America. So we just can't say the truth. So that's what psychohistory is. But anyways, wouldn't it be cool if we had a way to analyze the interaction of people and society with economics and big changes over time, over centuries, based on
millennia of human experience, which we have access to because we have 3,500 years of Chinese history. We have all of the history of Russia. We have the history of all of Asia and the Europeans and the colonial history. We have Turtle Island. We have what happened. Why don't we use the history that we know and the changes that have happened there to analyze what we're doing now and how we can change things in the future, right? But the West doesn't do that. The West is like, in 1492, Columbus sailed the it's a list of disconnected white dudes and facts. In 1776, Thomas Jefferson, something, Declaration of Independence, freedom, and everything was good. And then, nothing, just some white guy did some great thing, and now everyone's free. And then it was slavery and badness in the South, but then there's a civil war, and then the slavery was gone, and everything's good now. Never mind the 2.5 million for-profit prison slaves mechanically separating Tyson chicken nuggets inside of a prison in Arkansas. Never mind. So, right, it's just like they don't do dialectic history, right? They do really bad, fairy tale PR for white supremacy, capitalism, and empire. That's all the West does. They don't do history, right? But if you want to actually analyze what has happened at a grand scale and learn like how that can impact what changes led, economic changes that led to environmental changes, the environmental changes led to different political, how this war led, why did this war break out actually, right? And also have to be honest about what happened, which the West can't do because the Europeans have been doing all the crimes for the last 500 years. They don't want to talk about their crimes. Normal thing, I mean, not normal, it's abnormal to be doing such heinous crimes as killing billions of people and enslaving the fucking planet and destroying it with your European capitalism and colonialism, right? And enslaving Africans, right? But it's kind of like the West can't do dialectical thinking. The West can't do Harry Seldon's psychohistory. Also, it has to be a white guy who invents it, otherwise Americans wouldn't read the book. Harry Seldon should be black or Asian or something. Probably black and Asian and Jewish and also communist and also Russian. But they don't, or one of those things, right? But Harry Seldon has to be white because it's a book published in America, because Asimov has the sad misfortune of being raised a communist Russian in America during the Cold War. So, or really at any time. I would never want to be an American. It's a terrible thing to be. So, I'm a Hawaiian. We're not Americans. But, so, I was forcefully Americanized. So, but Harry Seldon himself is, in fact, a stand-in for the actual history of people who went to the outskirts of empire, right? Where it's very, obviously, because it's very difficult. That's part of why I'm in the outskirts of the U.S. empire's occupation in Hawaii. Honolulu is very hard to organize, and people are doing it there. But it can be easier, and you're more off the radar when you're further away from the heart where the most money and the power, the soldiers, the troops, and the grip and the information, right? The information, the visibility of the empire's watchful eyes are most intense in Trantor, in the foundation, right? Trantor is the equivalent of Rome or New York, DC, London, right? Historically, right? Versailles, right? It's hard to organize with just you and your 5 friends. You're not going to do too much just there, right? And so Harry Seldon goes to the fringes of empire, like Hawaii. It's the fringe of the United States empire. It's the least legitimate state of the United States. It's a fake state of Hawaii, based on a fraudulent annexation and a rigged vote using U.S. military members to literally go into voting booths and vote to join the United States. It's a rigged vote, fake vote. So, I'm Harry Seldon. I'm just kidding. I'm not Harry Seldon. I'm not some white guy. But it's people who are, it's a story about people who are, in a galactic sense, right? Because the Transian Empire is like multi-trillions of people, right? They have warp ships, they have jump ships, they have the ability to, wink out of a place in Alpha Centauri and appear, somewhere in the nostrils of the horse in the Horsehead Nebula, if they feel like it. And so it's a vast spanning empire. They have nanotechnology, there's cybernetics, there's robotics, they have cloning technology, right? It's all the stuff that you'll see in your Star Wars. That is that kind of big space sci-fi. And it has an empire like Star Wars. Well, actually, I should say Star Wars has an empire like Foundation because it came first.
So does Dune. They all stole from this book, and so the Foundation, the at the fringes, right? Harry is inside of a box. He's inside of a computer simulation. I'm not gonna give you the whole plot. Let me skip forward a little bit. Harry is has told, right, to the faces of the Cleons. He's told them. He said, "We are going to pass away because this empire, right, as I said earlier, is on the verge of collapse. If we do nothing," he tells straight to the empire. He says, "If we do not, what does he say? 30. I can't remember. There's. Oh, here it is. Yeah. If the timeline, if we don't fix this future that I've predicted using psycho history, right? It will lead to a cascade of crises. I'm sorry. It will lead to us in humanity being in violence and suffering and barbarism, and just it will be in a terrible dark age. Millions of people, trillions of people will die and suffer for 30,000 years. If we alter our course of our civilization, right? Harry tells the Empire, if we alter our course, we could have a lot of serious turmoil and violence and death still, but it will only last 500 years, right? So this some of this is kind of like creepily like long-termist kind of stuff that's like, but it's a science fiction story. It's a science fiction story, right? And so it's projecting, like, you have trillions of people in a civilization that's spanning 100,000 light years, whereas Earth civilization spans 25,000 mile diameter planet, and it's 8 billion people. So it's kind of multiplying that out a bit further. I mean, maybe in Earth time I'd be like, we'll suffer pain for a decade or 2 decades, or maybe 3 decades, but we won't have like centuries and centuries of just horrible suffering. So it's kind of like, if another way to think about that, right? When Harry Seldon is proposing, if we use our psychohistory, we can get out from this horrible era a lot quicker. He's kind of proposing, let's have a revolution now, it's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be easy. To organize this, right? We're going to have to unionize. When we unionize, right? Like the Screen Actors and like the like SAG, right? I mean, like SAG-AFTRA is currently having. If we organize, the United States will, the ruling class, the empire, the capitalist U.S. empire, right, will come down on us, right? They will threaten us, right? They will say, we're gonna starve you out, right? We're gonna starve you out, like Ron Perlman recently pointed out. The United States has said, the United States is as a capitalist plutocracy. They said, we are going to end game. We're going to drag this on till you all lose your houses and your family starts starving, right? So that in a sense, that is the Foundation deal. It's gonna hurt when you're striking. You're not working. When you're striking, you're gonna have to ration out food. It's not gonna be fun. When you're striking, you're gonna have to show up. You're not doing what you love to do. The unionizers, right? As people doing left action, doing dialectical societal psychohistorical change, right? Changing the psychos, the so-called great men of history psychos. That's what psychohistory is. It's called telling Bob Iger to go take a swim near the Titanic in an Ocean's Gate sub. No. By taking action to make huge changes in the society, because this is going to make a big change. And I would argue, like, what I want is a full general strike, and then capitalist system collapses in the end of U.S. empire, and multipolar socialist path world with indigenous environmental, societal, ethnic strife being reduced, and positive changes in all these directions. Post-capitalist, getting indigenous people back on the multi-100,000 year track we were on before the brief interruption for the last 500 to 2,000 year Western barbarism. But making these grander, making this long, potentially centuries and 1,000-year positive change, right, takes short-term. Now, what is short-term? Again, to a Westerner, short-term means the next 5 minutes, right? Put me on timeout for 5 minutes,
the average CEO is crying his eyeballs out, right? Tell a white man to shut up for fucking 3 seconds. He's already crying, right? Short term is like, what does that mean, right? But short term for Russians is like 2 decades, you know? Short term for indigenous people is like 2 centuries, you know? Short term for a communist is like 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years. Short term is 1 lifespan, right? In foundation, that's why I say it's thinking very differently. For foundation, short term is thinking about 1 lifespan, right? When Harry talks, when the other characters talk, right? When the members of the foundation talk, they're talking about, 10 lifespans from now, how are things going to be? That's indigenous. That's similar to indigenous thinking, right? How will my actions now, by not harvesting extra maple now, how will the maple be in existence and flourishing 10 generations, right? 1,000 years from now? How will that happen? So you see how like that foundation thing is very much like the indigenous people's thinking, which is just, I would argue, normal human thinking when where we're able to be our best selves, right? But Western individual, small, short-term, individual, personalized, capitalistic, right? Just geographically, right? Very small, just me right here, right now. Don't care about what's happening in a sweatshop. Don't care what's happening in some colony somewhere. Don't care what's happening in a slave pit that's making my products inside the United States, right? I don't care what's happening to the children that are 16-year-old getting sawed up by a freaking a sawmill, who are being forced to work as child laborers. I don't care. All I care about is my desk, my game, my food, my house, my personal everything, right? So foundation is like that's the way things are talked about, right? And so, but making those long-term bigger changes, right? It's like making a multi-thousand-year-old growth food forest that provides everything in a quote-unquote Edenic sense. But the West only fell from Eden because they could not get their shit together. But you can have coexistence with nature in a variety of different ways if you but you have to get around that Wendigo, the selfish Hawaiian chief thinking. You have to get out of that capitalist small-term, short-term thinking in order to and acting and behavior in order to make those significant changes. So anyways, so that's why, when you take this strike, it's going to hurt, right, in the short term, right? A month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I mean, again, if you are really serious about this struggle, you're talking about years, right? You know, that's what they say. You can't be a communist and want instant gratification, right? You cannot. You like, this is a project that's gonna, if you want to undo the capitalist problems, it's gonna take, you gotta go to people's houses, you gotta knock on doors, you're gonna have to talk. When you start talking and like salting that union, getting people, like, the thing is, this strike has been building and building and building, right? And all the other kinds of labor organizing, this doesn't just happen. Like, people have to go and talk to their workers. Somebody got to come in and go, hey, why are we even unionizing? And Americans are some of the most anti-union people. Why? Because it's the headquarters of the West. It's the most capitalist. It is the capitalist, imperialist, capital of selfish shitheads of the world. That's why Bolsonaro comes to the U.S. Everybody, the richest, the capitalists in China, they all come to the United States. Like the Rabia Kadir, the 6th richest person in China, richest woman in China. She came to the United States to try to get communism, the Communist Party of China, out of China, because that's so. The United States propagates non-foundation thinking, and by non-foundation, what I mean is the foundation entity as a actual left dialectical thinking Marxist, pro worker and peace centered and organization trying to undo a capitalist empire. Like, they don't say that because it just obviously is, because but the foundation itself is trying to build that over the long term by taking a lot of these short term losses, right? That's coming back to that point. So when they say you're gonna lose your house, the thing is, like, Ron Perlman was saying was, there's a lot of ways to lose your house. Hey, one of them is figuring out who the fuck said that and where he fucking lived. That's what Ron Perlman said. Ron Perlman said that, not me. But so Ron Perlman in this moment was going quite hard. Actually, I think like some people were like, Brian, you gotta take that down. But the thing is,
that is also that. I mean, technically, that is how dialectical change does happen, which is that the I mean, again, in a foundational psychohistory analysis, when the masses of oppressed classes of people who are doing the work, right? There is no Disney, there's no movies, there's no Secret Invasion, or there's no Invert Invasion, there's no nothing, there's no Marvel, there's no Game of Thrones, there's no House of the Dragons, there's no Star Wars, there's no nothing without the workers, without the writers. There's no games either, right? I wish the game workers would strike simultaneously. There's no games, there's no movies, there's no nothing, there's no UPS, there's no any products anywhere without the workers, right? And so when the parasitic, non-productive, but also simultaneously the worst who are actually ruling, right? Which is the normal Western broken way, right? It's when the one greedy Hawaiian chief, if that guy ever gets into power, that's going to be the end of our. Then we'll have 1,000 years of darkness, like the Foundation, like Harry Seldon would say, right? So, but when the worst start taking too much, and which they frequently do, I mean, the Russians understand this. They've seen this happen. They've look at history, right? The Chinese understand this. Oh, the Chinese even try to analyze why they even understand. Like sometimes we have these dynasties and this system that sometimes it begins to rot, and the top people at the top take too much. They take too much. Things collapse, and that's not good for anyone. They have like dozens upon dozens of these histories. They have dozens of these sections of history that they study to try to prevent that from happening and try to make the positive, successful, what they call rejuvenated civilization last as long as possible. The West don't do that. They don't even care to try to do that, right? So but it's when this happens, then the people who fucked around, who are the rulers, they're the kings and the queens, they're the Roman emperors, and they're the Greek wealthy, which they had an oligarchy, the European feudal kings and the colonial powers, and finally now the American capitalists. Well, they're all capitalists, but are finding out. And now some of them find out slower, some of them find out faster. But so anyways, that's the other part of what he's saying. But and so in the short term, it is gonna suck. As a population, as I said, when you're striking, you're not making movies, you're not doing what you love. I don't think actors and writers, they don't want to be walking around the street with their sign, particularly. That's not what they signed up to do, right? They didn't spend, their 10 years of their life honing their skills in writing and conveying emotions, right, to do that, right? But they have to do that, right? They're all saying we have to, right? Fran Drescher is the head of the union. She has some problematic takes on things, but it's. She wore, there's actually a thing of Fran Drescher who actually wore, she had a mouse skirt in one of her shows. Did anybody ever see this? She actually wore, she wore this mouse skirt in the nanny. I didn't realize that. Like, look at who is on that skirt. Anyways, so, but the thing is, when they're all saying, we have to do this now. Because people are saying, oh, the Hollywood executive is saying, this is going to hurt so many people. This is going to hurt so many people, right? The Foundation is saying, the Cleons would say, if you, right, they say, respect and enjoy the peace. Isn't it so great that we have peace, right? Isn't it so great that we have this nice peace here, right? And you all get to enjoy it. But the thing is, yes, if people don't resist the capitalist U.S. system and just accept it, technically, in the short term, it is a bit. Right? In the short term, it will be a bit more peaceful. If you stand up for your rights, the United States will put its police on you, right? You could lose your job. During the 50s, people like Asimov could have went to prison. They could have been deported, could have went in a deep dark hole just for being Russian. If you're a communist, lose your job or worse, right? You could be on the blacklist. You could be banned, Hollywood blacklist, right? So you wouldn't write again. You would never be on any shelf. So in the short term, resistance can cause you shorter term suffering. But in the longer term, if you want to get rid of the system, you have to take the shorter term. You see how you need to look beyond yourself, because you can't do a union action individually. But that's why all Western movies and all Western media, all Western stories are about individuals looking up to, kissing the ass of, punching down to people under you, and looking up to the
individual at the top trying to be that individual and thinking only individually, because that empowers the entire individualistic, short-termist, Western broken system, right? And so, in order to unionize, you have to think about the collective. Every one of us together working in this, pushing in the same direction for our collective good, so that we all make decent pay, don't have to be writers that are like limping around on credit cards, living couch surfing while we make god freaking shows that are winning Emmys. You can just look at TikTok, look at SAG and writer strike posts by the actors and writers. They're like, everyone has these nightmare stories. Like, I'm like gonna be up for an Oscar. I'm up for a Hollywood, a major award, Emmy award, and I'm like literally don't have a house. It's ridiculous. It's like absolutely ridiculous, right? So it's kind of like, it's at that point where the psychohistory analysis is the United States, or the class analysis is the United States is reaching a point where the contradictions, the differences, the amount of suffering and exploitation of the working class is so great that the society, the civilization itself, like the Cleons, having sex with their robot mommy, neglecting the rest of the people, blowing up and crushing and putting down uprisings all over the place violently and brutally, are saying, they're basically letting everything fall apart around them, right? Because of their stuck-upness, their hubris, and also they shouldn't exist at all. They should all just be overthrown and replaced with some functioning, multipolar socialist, indigenous and black and people of color led system. Well, not necessarily led, but I mean, like, the changes have to be led, especially in a white supremacist world. But and so that's really where things are. And the emperor's so the emperor not having clothes is both. I'm trying to say that, again, see, episode 1 is good. I didn't even talk about the other characters. Like there are the two. I can't remember all of their freaking names, but there are several other characters other than the emperor and the Foundation. There's also the Salvin and Gal or Gale. They have sci-fi weird spellings and pronunciations. I can't remember, but they're also important in the show in the sense of they're kind of an alternate path of the Harry Seldon, who gets kind of he's a very stuck-up character as a revolutionary leader. He's definitely more the Trotskyite white guy trying to sell you his personal plan that he's keeping to himself, right? How things are going to change. And then you have the other people that are two women of color that are like going, well, maybe that's not the way. like this is the way, capital W, my way. And it's kind of like, maybe that's not the way, like, and so it's interesting where that's going. But anyways, so the point is that, like, in the Emperor Lee Pace, as you can see, bottom left of this image, very small, very blurred, but I did that so that, I don't know, in case the algorithm doesn't like me showing naked pictures of actors. Okay, so you get Emperor has no clothes. Okay, so if you want to see robot sex scenes with your elf daddy, and then Lee Pace is in there, and also known as Space Khal Drogo Daenerys Targaryen sex scenes. But I hope with intimacy coordinators. That there is no clothes, but also, I mean, you come for the naked Lee Pace, stay for the interesting science fiction, and there's lots of math in it. There's a lot of, sometimes, as I was saying earlier, sometimes it can get too, like, it can get a little bit dry. The dialectal analysis, the Russian thing, can get a little bit dry. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that, and that's not a sex joke. I'm just saying, it can get like very computational. Like there's one section where Harry is stuck inside of a Matrix-like prison, except the Matrix is a prettier, fancier, more hexagonal version of the Hellraiser puzzle box, and he's stuck into. Harry Seldon gets Hellraiser-ified in the puzzle box, and he's stuck inside. He can't get out, and he's talking a lot about four-dimensionality and mathematical equations and nonlinear Euclidean spacetime. And it's like, I mean, it's Asimov is a nerd. He's a literal science nerd and a professional mathematician, and he has multiple PhDs. So some of that comes out there, and it's kind of like, I mean, I get it, because I put that shit in I write science fiction all the time, so I get it. Sometimes kind of like, you gotta throw you have to throw some swinging dong between the sagging, dry lines of mathematical Greek and just it's all Greek. It's all being lost in pre-cal, and you gotta throw some swinging dong in there. That's all I'm saying. There's no dong in this show. I'm joking. You have to throw some wet, juicy, milk-colored bathwater, with some sexy star in it. In between your dry, non-Euclidean mathematical equations. That's all I'm saying. Maybe throw a little more frequently. Anyways, I'm joking. There's no sex. There's no actual naked people in the show. There's just people that are like, doing things. And there is not. It's not all mathematics. It's not all mathematics, but there are a few mentions of it. People do swim in the ocean and do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation up in the style of the Abyss. People intentionally drown themselves at one point in the show, which is interesting technique to save yourself. And there is a little water world bit. I didn't realize that whole planet was water because of anthropogenic climate change. There's a whole planet. The whole planet is just climate change to fuck, and now it's like a water world. Except it's two women of color instead of Waterworld's Kevin Costner being a white savior man doing indigenous Pacific navigation on a Hawaiian style Pacifica canoe. So that's better. That's better about Foundation. Anyways, it was the 90s. And Kevin Costner, Anyways, so anyway, that's the end of this show because I got to get out of here. I got to do another stream later on. Thank you so much for watching. It is don't forget, everything we do is supported by Ron Perlman and Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo's crow dance. I do my crow dance later. And Ron Perlman's motherfucker. Listen to me, motherfucker. You got to watch that video. It was like Ron Perlman should put that at the intro to the next Star Wars should be Ron Perlman going, "Listen, you rich motherfuckers. Motherfucker. You're going to motherfucking find out." Samuel L. Jackson and Ron Perlman should just be like eating a motherfucker off together. Be like, "Motherfucker." And Samuel L. Jackson's like, "Motherfucker, I will strike down upon your Bob Iger ass with great vengeance and furious motherfucking Iger." And Ron Perlman would be like, "Motherfucker, you can lose your motherfucking house, motherfucker. Your motherfucking mansion's gonna motherfucking be lost." Anyways. Neofeud is a video game that I made that is a game that is a dystopic cyberpunk adventure game in the vein of Blade Runner and with the Game of Thrones like political intrigue. So it is Foundation and Neofeud do have something in common. They're both science fictional and they have a lot of political intrigue within them, and they're both games that are made by people that there's not the happiest with the U.S. capitalist imperialist system. So consider picking up the game. Else you can get it on itch. It's on itch. Now my brain is just thinking about this mini movie I'm making in my head about Samuel L. Jackson and Ron Perlman and Danny Trejo. Anyway, so Neofeud is a game that is also on itch. You can get that, and you can also get it with the maximum revenue coming to us. And don't forget, you can also get other games such as if you like psychohistory, Decolonators is a interactive psychohistory analysis of the history of the 20th century, right? That's what it is. This is the foundation thought. Foundation. Vietnam was the foundation. It was an actual foundation happening in real time, right? It's a struggle of the Vietnamese people to liberate themselves for short-term losses for long-term gain, building what the foundation wanted to build against the United States empire, right? Empire went like this, and Vietnam went like this. So if you want to play Decolonators, then you can get that game there. You can also get Neofeud. No, you can't get Neofeud 2. Pigeon with Gun. Woman is a book by Holly that is about Holly was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is not meant to be a historical retelling, but a work of fiction that lends a different perspective to what is usually read in the Bible. It is you can get it for free or support us by throwing any amount of money when you pick it up. When you get that book, you can also become a Patreon member. Every dollar does go such a long way to help us keep on doing the work that we do here to educate and entertain at the same time. Hopefully both. And so it's also you get access to the Silver Spook Discord, Silver Spook behind the scenes on what we're working on Neofeud 2 and other things. I'm nearly done with Neofeud 2, very close to being done with it. And also you can get the Silver Spook University, which is 1,000 hours of content categorized according to topics. Also, don't forget to if you want, you can follow at Silver Spook Games at Octodon.social, at Silver Spook Games at Mastodon.social. You can follow that. That's not me. That's naked picture. Anyway, this is at Silver Spook Guy is where you can follow me on Twitter at Silver Spook Games minus the E in silver for the game stuff. Facebook and Instagram, we also have accounts there. Also, you can get you follow Terminus C. At Terminus C is Terminus Cyberstar. It's a low poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of Deus Ex and System Shock 2. This game is I'm the content director and lead writer of this game, and if you like the Neofeud, I also wrote this game. So you consider following that, and you can join their Discord if you want to join their Discord. And you can also follow Holly at that's the what? You can also follow Holly. There. You can also follow Holly at the Tech Fairy. Holly is educator, poet, moderator here. Of course, very always thankful for Molly's great moderation. Married to myself, producer and manager with Kate Next TV, which is also a show that is a stream Twitch show of music and variety of different types of entertainment. And Holly produces and writes for that. Holly is also parent and also the administrator here. And that's Holly and myself in a different dressing up differently. I will dress more like that later on today. So, and Holly is of course always tweeting important stuff and writing books. So follow Holly. Thanks to all the Patreon patrons. Thank you so much for all of your ongoing support. Massively appreciated. I gotta get out of here because I gotta go to sleep and wake back up and stream again. Thanks, Big Teal, for hanging out. And until next time, keep your mirror shades polished. Be excellent to each other. We support our modern day foundation and Harry Seldon's and all the psychohistory users that are currently engaging in undoing the empire of the earth, undoing the Cleons of the earth, and doing that writers and actors strike. So thanks a lot, everybody. Keep going. I'd say those writers and actors in that strike and the UPS workers do more than anybody visiting Hawaii trying to help us out as Hawaiians. Because the more that we undo the capitalist system and the U.S. Imperial system that it is all in a complex with, the better it will be for us, just as Native people under the U.S. in occupation. So